This video is brought to you by Squarespace. There is something strange about Atomos' story. Despite its success on the surface, the company has been rife with controversy since its inception. Drugs, security fraud, lawsuits, and more hide beneath the surface that have been coming to light here recently. Despite selling video monitors and external recorders, as well as some other video products very successfully, almost no history of the company exists on its website or Wikipedia page, despite making enough money for their CEO to get in trouble with his own yacht. Our investigation into this story involved a lot of court documents and legal proceedings to get a sense of this narrative. I was initially tipped off to this odd history of Atomos while I was at NAB in 2022 when I was at their booth for a quick interview and had just asked a pretty simple question about whether or not their new product would work with my Blackmagic camera. And this is how it turned out.
I noticed Blackmagic cameras on there. Is there a compatibility thing with them still that it's going to work out, or do you think they'll be?
I think it'll work. I actually, probably not. I don't know if there's an issue with that. I don't know about.
I know that before.
Let me just ask. No, right, okay.
Blackmagic film log, right? Don't publish this, but okay.
Now, here in Frame Voyager, we do respect those we are interviewing, and we will not play sections we are asked not to publish. But the funny thing is, none of the things we discussed or even the question itself were that noteworthy. But the reaction to the question about Blackmagic equipment made me a little interested. I knew there was a little bit of a beef between Atomos and Blackmagic Design, but I didn't know the details. And this culminated in about a year of research on Atomos and waiting for the right time to tell this incredibly dramatic story. So let's get into the troubled history of Atomos. It's just kind of odd to not really have anything about you on the internet nowadays. No story, no background. It's almost as if the individuals in our video today just hadn't heard about our sponsor for today's video, Squarespace. Our sponsor, Squarespace, just released their new Fluid Engine, the next generation website design system that allows you to completely customize your site for both desktop and mobile. Stretch your imagination online with Fluid Engine, built in and ready to go on any new Squarespace site. Now you can just click, drag, and move objects around easier than ever to achieve your creative vision for your website. Give it a try today by heading over to squarespace.com right now for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/framevoyager to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Atomos started as the product of a dispute between Grant Petty, CEO of Blackmagic Design, and two other major players in Blackmagic, Jeremy Young and Ian Overlease, the business and hardware development leads of the company. Overlease found himself at odds with Petty over his business plan, specifically the plans to develop BMD's DeckLink HD Extreme 2 card and discontinue the original DeckLink HD Extreme. Overlease ended up believing that Petty's strategies were highly risky, not worthwhile, and likely to drive up the company's costs, while Petty believed that the costs would be worth bearing. As a result of this dispute, Young and Overlease decided to go their own way to pursue their own venture, and Atomos was born in 2010, focusing on monitor recorders and accessories like connectors, mounts, and docking stations that can be used with a variety of cameras and give them plenty of extra functionality. On the surface, a respectable company and product offering, even if it's one that was born from a little bit of bad blood. But here's the problem. What the founders of Atomos did when splitting with Blackmagic Design wasn't all above board, and the company ended up being in hot water almost immediately after its founding. In early 2007, Overlease and Young, while still working at Blackmagic Design, began to discuss the potential of creating a business together, grounded in, at first, just audio products, but that would evolve beyond the scope of audio and into video. And this was all happening around the same time as the disagreements between Petty and Overlease around the video card development we just mentioned earlier. As things progressed for Young and Overlease, they started developing marketing plans and crafting business documents and registering the name Atomos Audio Limited. And during this time, Overlease began to start taking down information from Blackmagic Design for market research in February 2009. Specifically, Overlease used his knowledge as Blackmagic's hardware engineer director to create a spreadsheet called YCALC. estimating costs and profits of the products from Blackmagic Design and other potential competitors, and comparing them to the plans for Atomos, which led him to conclude that Atomos was sitting on a gold mine and could blow away everything Blackmagic Design has. Now, Young, for his part, did discourage Overlease from pursuing a competition against Blackmagic and not to use this information to create new products to compete with Blackmagic Design, but it did not stop Overlease from compiling documents specifically to create competitive products based on this information. And this all happened around in March 2008, when Overlease and Young were still working at Blackmagic. A month later, they were gone and the plans for Atomos were in motion. Court records report that following his resignation, Overlease placed all confidential information concerning Blackmagic stored on his home computer into an external storage drive before reformatting this computer. These storage devices were left at the residence of Young on May 8th. Upon searching the work computers of Overlease and Young, Petty was alerted to the documents concerning Atomos, such as the YCALC spreadsheet and the use of Blackmagic's confidential information in these documents. Blackmagic would go on to file a lawsuit against Atomos that made its way to the Australian federal court, and Blackmagic accused Young and Overlease of using confidential information gained during their time at the company to compete with them at Atomos, violating non-competition clauses in their contract. The court found that this was a misuse of confidential information for personal gain, and that it was improper. Although some of Blackmagic's other claims against Atomos, including claims for damages, misleading and deceptive conduct, breach of copyright, and breach of contract, were dismissed by the judge. This was still a bad sign for the company. The founders of Atomos had started their company by taking advantage of their senior positions at Blackmagic Design, and this led to some strong resentment between the two companies. After this lawsuit was resolved, the company would go on to successfully release multiple product lines over the next decade, establishing itself as a trusted brand in the industry, creating cutting-edge 4K external recorders, and even managing to dodge a lawsuit by Red and license raw codecs from them. Stocks were up, and the company was growing, even enough for Young to buy a yacht. Things were looking up, but this show of success was just a facade, covering up the turmoil at the very roots of the company. From 2011 to 2021, it's hard to tell much of what the company culture was and if there were any other warning signs of what was to come next. One thing you can note that happens during this time is at NAB in 2014, where Atomos made the unfortunate decision to bring along what is typically called booth babes in the industry. These booth babes were covered in almost nothing but paint walking around the booths, and you can see them here in No Film School's coverage of the event.
So we're looking at the Ninja Blade right now.
Yeah, this is the Ninja Blade. It was released at BVE in 2014. That's the show over in London. It's already won awards, which is really great.
Now, we are blurring out most of this to follow YouTube community guidelines, so in no way are we trying to shame any of the women in these videos or photos. But this is a trade show tactic that has gone on too long, and believe me, as a guy, don't listen to my opinion on this topic, but that of Megan Dutta, a tech journalist and co-founder of the Women in Digital Signage group. She says that CES still allows exhibitors to have booth babes. As I like to say, this is not a car show, it is a professional trade show. Having women in skimpy outfits to attract visitors is off-putting for most women. It also degrades female tech experts. Imagine working in your company's booth and being dismissed simply because people assume you are hired talent. When you go to different events and trade shows and the stands are filled with booth babes and women are seen as things and not taken seriously, it leaves a bad taste. Now, we point out this moment in time for the company because it does a good job of almost pointing to what comes next for them, with accusations of ignored sexual abuse and other cultural problems within the company that some dubbed a bro-like culture. So let's begin where the story starts to take a turn for Atomos in 2021. This year, Young resigned from his post as CEO and was forced to quarantine and fined several $1,000s after he was found to be breaching COVID rules by traveling across Australia on a yacht to watch a rugby match.
To developing news, and a group of yachties has been fined and sent into hotel quarantine over an alleged border breach. Caitlin Steadman, they snuck into Queensland on a super yacht.
That's right. The 4-member crew berthed here at Southport last week after arriving from a Sydney hotspot. Maritime Safety Queensland says they gave false and misleading information upon their arrival on board the 34-metre vessel Dreamtime.
After he told the local government that they hadn't visited any COVID hotspots when he indeed had. This had an odd timing with his resignation, and Atomos would tweet out that the two had no connection as he resigned 2 to 3 months before this incident, but he did still remain at a senior level position at the company, and it was definitely not a good look at the time. After he resigned, he was replaced by Estelle McGechie, a developer and marketer with a wealth of experience from companies like Apple, Disney, and Frame.io. She seemed like the person to put the company back on track, saying she was excited and honored to lead such an extraordinary team and continue Young's work. But things didn't turn out to be so rosy.
Well, you'll have to watch this space. I think the next few months are going to be very, very interesting.
In April 2022, McGechie was fired from Atomos. According to the company, it was because she refused to relocate to Australia, where the company's corporate HQ was located. But McGechie herself told a very different story. And this is where things shift from speculation and scandals to serious misconduct. She claimed she was fired for challenging what she called rampant illegal conduct at the company, alleging Atomos had engaged in securities fraud, used false sales forecasts to artificially increase growth, had ignored instances of sexual abuse, and had participated in channel stuffing, which is the shipping of worthless dud products to meet sales forecasts and increase share prices. Atomos, of course, has denied all of these allegations, and a court case surrounding them is still ongoing, so we don't have all of the facts at the time of this video's release. But we do know that it isn't just the word of a disgruntled former boss. Just a few weeks ago, the ASIC, Australia's corporate regulator, seemed to back up some of the claims against Atomos, pushing the company to revise its yearly financial report for 2022 after it was found to have reported almost 9 million Australian dollars, nearly 6 million US dollars in unearned income, leaving investors with a false impression that the company was fulfilling its obligations when that just wasn't the case. The news of McGechie's firing and allegations, coupled with essentially lying to investors, sent their stock prices into a freefall. The auditors looking into this company's conduct during this time have still yet to sign off on the latest results for the ASX listed company. Auditor Deloitte has said that he has still not seen sufficient evidence during the 2022 to 2023 interim. Atomos is trying to fix this situation, but with the impending legal fees for its court battles with its former CEO, weak sales, and problems with its financial reporting, the future remains very uncertain for Atomos moving forward. And if you want to see more coverage on a scandalous company and just outright strange behavior, why not check out our video series chronicling our copyright battle with Cine Martin over their mysterious abandoned camera, the Fran 8K.